Hi, we're going to talk today. This is the video lesson for our Writing 1 class today. We're going to talk about introductory structures. All right, so I just want to remind us that we are not talking about a new design or structure for a whole sentence. Remember that we only have 4 structures for sentences in English. Simple sentences, that's one main clause. Compound sentences have more than one main clause joined by conjunctions. Complex sentences have a main clause and some subordinate clauses. The subordinate clause can come before the main clause, or the subordinate clause can come after the main clause, either way. And then the 4th structure is a combination of compound and complex. So we are not talking about another way to design a sentence. We're talking about something else that can happen with sentences. All right? Now, an introductory structure does what it says it does. It introduces a sentence. When we first meet somebody, we introduce ourselves, right? So at the beginning of a sentence, there might be a group of words, a structure. It could be a phrase or a clause or a single word that introduces or gets us ready for, sets the scene for the rest of the sentence. And why should we care? Because there are comma rules associated with introductory structures. And there are lots of comma questions on the GED or the HiSET. So let's take a look at some examples. Look at the first example on our worksheet. Example says, having just returned from work, Julie was not in the mood for an argument about the issue. If we analyze that sentence, we find that where I marked subject and predicate on this handout, they're in the wrong place, so you can cross them out. But who or what is doing something in that sentence? It's Julie, right? What did Julie do? She was. Julie was. So that's the subject and the predicate in that main clause. And I underlined that main clause there, right? So this is the main clause. Julie was not in the mood for an argument about the issue. That's the main clause. But in front of that main clause, we've got something else happening here, right? We've got a group of words that is kind of setting us up for the rest of the sentence or introducing the rest of the sentence. Now, what we notice about that group of words is that it is not a clause. It's a group of words. It's a phrase. It's not a clause because it doesn't have a subject and a predicate. Remember, a clause is a group of words with a subject and a predicate. But this doesn't have a subject in it. Who or what is having just returned from work? Who or what is doing something? There's no answer to that there. There's a verb, having, but there's no noun that goes with that verb. So it's just a group of words. It's just a phrase. Okay? And it's introducing the rest of the sentence. So it's an introductory phrase. All right? An introductory phrase. Now, what we know about an introductory phrase is that we put a comma after an introductory phrase. So, having just returned from work, comma, Julie was not in the mood. So before our main clause, we have this group of words, this phrase, that introduces the main clause. All right? It's not another clause. It's just a phrase. Okay, look at number 2, the second example. Because it was Saturday, Karen knew that her magazine would arrive. Okay, because it was Saturday, Karen knew that her magazine would arrive. Well, when we analyze that sentence, again, where I wrote the subject and predicate, they're not in the right place, so you can cross them out. But, so, because it was Saturday, Karen knew, there's one subject and predicate. They go together, that's the main clause. Here's another main clause, magazine would arrive. that her magazine would arrive. That's a clause because it's a group of words with a subject and predicate. Magazine is the subject, would is the predicate. But it can't be a sentence by itself, that her magazine would arrive. So it's a subordinate clause, right? So we underlined our main clause, Karen knew, and we put brackets around our subordinate clause, that her magazine would arrive. But in front of those clauses, we've got another subordinate clause, because it was Saturday. Subject is it, the predicate is was. It's a group of words with a subject and a predicate, but it can't be a sentence by itself. So what do we know about that? That's a subordinate clause, right? Now, because the subordinate clause comes first, because it introduces the rest of the sentence, it's an introductory structure. In this case, it's a clause. But because it's an introductory structure, we're going to put a comma after it. Because it was Saturday, comma, Karen knew that her magazine would arrive. Another kind of introductory structure. Okay, look at the third example. To be fully prepared for camp, children need many supplies. So if we analyze this sentence, subjects and predicates, children is a subject, need is a predicate, children need many supplies, that's a main clause. So we underline it. Children need many supplies, that's a main clause. The subject and predicate are not in the right place. And in front of the main clause, we have a group of words. To be fully prepared for camp. To be fully prepared for camp. So that is a group of words, but it doesn't have a subject or a predicate. It's just a phrase. It's an introductory phrase. It introduces the rest of the sentence. So because it's an introductory phrase, an introductory structure, we're going to put a comma after it. To be fully prepared for camp, comma, and then the main clause. Okay? One more example. Unfortunately, the car completely refused to start. So we have our main clause. Car is the subject. Refused to start is the predicate. There's a main clause. The car completely refused to start. That's a main clause. The car completely refused to start. So we underline it as a main clause. Look, in front of the main clause, we've got this word just hanging out there. It's an introductory word. Just one word, not even a whole phrase or a clause. But it's introductory. So because it's an introductory thing, an introductory structure, we're going to put a comma after it. Unfortunately, comma, the car completely refused to start. So you can see that introductory structures can be single words, or they can be phrases, or they can be clauses if they're subordinate clauses. Okay? We're going to stop this video here, come back and do some exercise practice. All right.